Hey guys and girls, waiting for this to always give it a couple of seconds just to live. I don't know if we're live, don't know if we're waiting
Live-ish.
for people. It has this like spinny wheel, and now we're live.
All
I
right.
think we're live. So,
Copy that.
hey guys and girls, Nathan here from the B.Invested headquarters, and today I have got tax strategist, director, principal at One Path Accountants, Ridhwan Hannon.
Yeah, everyone, how you doing?
Sorry?
Nathan, how you doing?
Good, yeah, awesome. What a fantastic time to be alive.
It's an interesting time.
Yeah, it is. It
Biggest
is.
budget deficit in our lifetimes.
It's amazing. We've spoken about this stuff for like maybe 5 years or so. It's like about like
I
the
think
monetary
you and I
stuff.
gave a early helicopter piece. Do you remember? Maybe 2-3 years ago, where you said that helicopter money was coming.
Yeah. Everyone used to write on the comments on YouTube, Nathan's on drugs, get off the drugs. Imagine if I did drugs. I'd be crazy.
You would have missed it all.
With it, what a great time to be alive, right? Like it's, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. What a great time to be alive, right? Like biggest budget deficit ever. Normally people are like, oh no, me the taxpayer is going to have to pay for it. No, it's a different world, different paradigm we live in. There's some people that are going to be benefiting a lot out of this,
Certainly.
and a lot of people that are going to be miserable out of this. It's always miserable people, always happy people, but I guess where you want to sit on that spectrum is important, and
And it's always how you look at it, the opportunities you try to make for yourself. Nathan obviously being key to that type of, I guess, drive to be able to make sure whatever situation you are in, you can actually make the best out of it. So the budget itself, it is what it is. You can't do anything about it.
yeah,
But you've got to get what you can out of it and make sure that you capitalise on these times.
that's amazing. I think you're going to get a tattoo. I got no tattoos. I was saying the other day,
Friedenberg.
Friedenberg down this arm, Scammo down this arm, job keeper, job seeker, job maker, job maker. Everyone thought I was about again when I said, "Oh no, they're going to have to put in a job maker." I literally
I think
called
you said
job,
maker.
literally called
Yeah,
job
I remember,
maker
I remember.
all that time ago, and here we are with trillions of dollars. I saw an article that said 2080 will be the year that if they can ever repay this debt, and this is where currency is flying off the cliff. I saw this little picture. Someone posted it on my Facebook earlier, and it was a picture of it was a Robert Kiyosaki book that he just created called Fake, and it's got this chart, and it won't be. I might post it in Birch Feed for everyone a little bit later. But this chart, I was looking at this when I was just at the chiropractor before. Check out this one. This chart here shows when in the Weimar government in the 1920s in Germany, and basically money just lost all control. And you look at the money printing that's occurred, and look at the amount of stimulus package that we've been putting in. And this is just like these documents here are just full of stimulus packages and incentives to businesses. It doesn't mean the economy is doing great, right? It doesn't mean the economy is doing great. It means that we're in a recession, and most notably a global financial depression, right, which we'll call 2 years before it, before we hit, like to the public, like 3 years.
At least.
And we were talking about this back in, I actually still got this text messages, got a screenshot of it that I sent to a group from back in September 2016 saying we've got 1 week before capital markets start imploding, the liquidity would dry up, and that's when APRA came out and some notable events that occurred. And here we are, where we're printing money to fix up the messes, right? This is there's only one way out. There's two ways out of it. One is to watch it crash and burn, which they're not going to let happen, or print over it. But this time, the amount of monetary policy and manipulation out there is so large that it's just amazing. We're going to see the death of the system, death of our currency, and what's your thoughts? Because we had other people on yesterday on a webinar, like, I always say independent advice when you speak to everyone. We're all got different. Would you agree with that, or would you say?
So I think that there's truth. There's always truth in the middle. So there's three types of truth: your truth, my truth, and truth in the middle.
Yeah.
I think that there is certainly deflationary pressures going on with regard to how good our economy is from a monetary point of view. I certainly think that, and you can see in gold prices, silver prices, mineral prices, and everything that's going on. I think you said it, that Nathan, I was maybe 2 years ago, you said that but when things become difficult, they start pulling stuff out of the ground because it actually has value, right?
Mhm.
So I think you can see that now. And obviously, it's a very interesting market where you've got the stock market all-time highs, both the US and Australia, two markets we know well. We hear about every morning.
How do we get there?
But yeah, there's a big disconnect between what's happening economically, where they're printing out a lot of money. Like America, I think, has just released its third $1 trillion stimulus package. So those numbers are just insane. Like if you can't even jump over those numbers. They're so big.
I don't want to get into politics, right? And I don't think Trump's a bad bloke. Like, I met him and he was a gentleman. Like,
I'll
Trump
disagree with you on that one, but
yeah, like a different feedback for all, right? Yeah, like as I said, I don't want to get into politics on it. I find a humorous point to it, right? It's like nothing. I'm politically atheist. It doesn't bother me, right?
Yeah, of course.
I understand they're just Muppets with a string, right? They wheeled out bloody Joe Biden and they got
Literally.
we've seen it with what's his name, the guy in the wheelchair that they wheeled out before him, the scientist guy that they put out, Stephen Hawkins,
yeah.
and now they've got out what do you think, Joe Biden, right?
Again, it is what it is, but it's how you read and how you captivate that market.
In Trump, he goes, oh, I've got the best thing ever. You got the best corona ever, right? He's got the best of everything, apparently.
Tremendous corona.
Tremendous corona. It's the most biggest corona in the whole world. But on a serious note, like when he came in, he said, the president-elect Trump to the actual president that's in, the president had no control. He's just a muppet.
Yeah.
Right? He goes, we're going to get rid of all this, and he came with some good policies, like as far as removing debt and doing certain things with the Fed and stop all this expansion of monetary policy. However, he hasn't been able to do anything. He's begging for 0 to negative interest rates.
Yeah,
he said that he blamed Obama, which had I think about $18 trillion worth of debt when he came into office. $18 trillion worth of debt, and now he's up to almost 30 trillion.
Well,
in one term.
1/3 of that has gone in stimulus just alone, right?
Yeah.
So it's just nuts.
50% of all of the debt that the country had taken into history, half that again just in one term.
Yeah.
And I did an analogy a couple of months ago, or maybe a month ago, where it talked about a stadium. And imagine if you had a football stadium and you just drop one drop of water in the stadium. You won't even see, you need binoculars to go and see the drop. And then every 30 seconds, we'll see the drop double in size, right? So the first drop, where did it happen? Oh, there it happened over there. 30 seconds later, double the size, bigger drop, never saw it. 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, keep doubling every 30 seconds. Within an hour, like half an hour go past, you'd be like, I don't even see a puddle on the ground, right? And then after, 45 minutes, the stadium, you'll start seeing a bit of a puddle occur. And then it'll only be in the last sort of 10 minutes when there's a blow off top where you start seeing everyone in the stadium get flooded. And that's what I guess the stimulus package we're going to start seeing, the exciting part of this decade. And I asked Red before we came on here, and he's like, there's not much that we can talk about the budget because it's very different to what it used to be, and we'll run through that. One notably thing now that we've got the accountant in the house, it's important when I'm going to talk you up here, everyone. It's important when you're trying to create wealth and build wealth, that you've got all these commies out there that are trying to steal your money and extort you for extortion fees, being taxes and whatnot. That's my opinion, by the way. And it's important that you've got someone that's bold and strong, that can help you navigate your way through that sort of market. And that's where Red comes in and helped out thousands of our clients over.
We've worked together for 7 years.
7 years now.
7 years now, yeah.
Wow.
So.
We were both skinnier then. But yeah, it's important that you look at how can you minimise your exposure, and having an accountant with a personality is really rare, because we've seen them before and they can't even pronounce the word property before, right?
I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, it's good. It's good to have you and have your feedback. And I'll hand it all over to you in a second. But one observation that I have seen from this budget is that the tax cuts is making negative gearing redundant. And I've always said
Yeah,
it's a flawed strategy.
that's absolutely true.
All those spruikers are going to be, they're going to be soon, then they're going to be turning positive cash flow with no
Well, we've seen that with the change in
rates
interest
anyways.
rates.
Yeah.
There's so many clients this year where they go, oh, the properties feel a lot better now.
Yeah.
But then with the tax return amount, they're a little bit disappointed. I'm like, well, it's because the property's doing better, they're doing what they're meant to be doing. So
Yeah.
that's a really astute observation, which to be honest with you, in the last 3 days of reading all the budget fun stuff, no
Yeah.
one's really come up with, right? So
Yeah.
it's things that we know as accountants that, eventually negative gearing as a policy will have a half-life.
Yeah.
It'll either be taken away from you completely,
Yeah.
or because of changes within the tax framework, it will become less and less lucrative.
There's actually a call that I made, and it was a really outlandish call, and it was in the middle of our mentoring program. There was a lot of really crazy stuff that I talked about
Yeah, there
at
was
that time,
actually.
and a lot of swearing. And I was thinking the other day, I'm not as fun as what I used to be, right? I used to say this stuff. Everything I say now
You've
just sounds
proven
like
right.
it just sounds like mainstream. But I was being mocked so bad, I'd like yell and be like, "Guys, fucking understand, there's a tsunami coming, right?" And I think everyone's got the message now that we've got a tsunami of debt, and it'll wash away the value of our currencies. But there was one thing that we had touched on, talked about, and mentioned in there. I don't know I can't remember what your thoughts were on it. But I said that when the GFD gets to its depths of its lowest days, we're going to see negative interest rates. We're going to see universal basic incomes. We're going to see stimulus packages and infrastructure projects galore. And I said at the real depths of it that I could imagine that they would actually repay all taxes ever paid in our life, like a jubilee, right? And repay all those taxes. And we're sort of getting to a point now where businesses are, getting those tax backs and whatnot. So it's really been a great year, like just the amount of stimulus, like.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Yeah.
I guess there is a way of looking at the return of tax, whether you're looking at what you were mentioning, the carry forward losses, which can now be applied to current year matters. Those have been used historically. They're used in places like America to be able to smooth out what is income.
Yeah.
But the long term or the underlying effect is that they need to come up with ways in which to increase receipts, but at the same time they're giving everyone tax cuts.
Yeah.
So it's either got to come home to roost or they've got to reset this clock. Right.
And I reckon that there's only enough for one more cycle. Like we're in that last cycle now. Like.
Yeah, look, I mean, you have been pretty right so far, so maybe.
It's I personally think there's one cycle, and this will be like an amazing time. Everyone will feel rich, and then the big depression.
Yeah,
like,
I reckon. Yeah, I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
I think it'll wipe out middle class.
Yeah. Well, we'd hope not.
Oh, people can jump to the side. So.
One thing that you did say, which is pretty impressive, is that as soon as JobKeeper came out and you texted me, and you go, "It's here," and they're not going to take it away.
They can't.
Yeah, it's very difficult, right? So the wage subsidy, and they're calling it job maker now, or hiring credit, for example, where you get money to have staff, right?
Yep.
So essentially, it is a type of EBI, just funneling it through someone else.
Universal basic income, not a sexually transmitted disease. That sounds like everyone knows. What's a UBI?
So it is one of those weird things which, again, astutely, that it's difficult to take away social policy and social financial mechanisms and measures away from people. They get very dependent on it.
Yeah.
And similarly, like with things like your unemployment rates and stuff like that, they're close to doubled in the last 6 to 8 months. It's going to be hard to get that back down. So in terms of that middle class you're referring to, I think you'll have, as you said, a larger, lower socioeconomic class.
Yeah.
And then you'll have a bit of a miss.
Larger.
And then you'll have, a high income bracket. So it is interesting, and I think it's, worrying as well.
Yeah, it is.
So again, to what the policies and the sort of principles that we ascribe to is that you need to take that control back. So I was talking to a client yesterday, and they were referring about, when do you think the next boom is? When do you think? And I said, look, all that crystal balling is very difficult. What you can only know and do now is purchase now. Know the fundamentals of why you're purchasing, whether it's cash flow positive, whether it's equity, access, properties. You just need to know what you're getting into, so that way you can measure it. Right? And as per what we've told clients along the way is that structuring, types of properties they get, it all needs to be balanced out anyway. So people get paralytic about, people call Nathan and I at all hours and say, should I buy in a trust? Should I buy in this? Should I buy in that? The key part that everyone's missing is that you structure it as best as you can at the time,
Yeah.
and to make sure that you're in the position that whenever this cycle does come home to roost,
Yeah.
you're in control, right?
Yeah.
And you're a good example of that. You've got
Yeah.
properties in your personal name, trusts, super funds.
Got them everywhere.
You've got them places you don't know.
I don't ever know where some of them are. It's a fun problem to have.
Yeah, well, sorting it out. So yeah, but look, one question I wanted to ask: what was your impressions of the budget?
It's a good question. I just think it's amazing. The biggest part that I loved was that we're in over $1 trillion debt.
We will be. Yeah.
That's $1 trillion debt, and most people would be reporting going, "Oh, the nation's bad, it's so bad," and all that sort of stuff. That is so great, right? Because they're going to have to kill this currency. They're going to kill it. They can't get out of this debt. They've screwed the economy. They've screwed the country, and it's written all over the wall. And just knowing that it's 1 trillion, we're never coming back from that. We're never coming back. The world isn't the way that it was. I said at the start in March that we would see $1 trillion worth of deficit. Like that was actually one of the calls. Yeah, I actually said that was one of the calls on one of these Facebook lives, and we would see it in $1 trillion, and it wouldn't stop. And I calculated it all the way up to $1 trillion, and I just stopped counting because. And then when I saw it in $1 trillion, I'm like, wow, they calculated it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this year, I think we're very close to $750 billion, and then by 2023, 2024. We're going to cross that.
Oh, we're going to cross it before that.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
We're going to be in the multiple trillions by then. and people will feel richer. They will feel richer. But when they go to the shops, they won't feel richer. When they go and purchase, I went and took my quad bike in actually. Random fact for the day. I had 2 tasks to do today, 2 chores that I did, and one was I had to replace my water pump that blew. And then the second one is I thought I'd take my quad down and get that fixed. And I was like wondering what they sell them for. And I think I paid like $6,000 for my Polaris. And I went down, they don't have a Polaris, but they have a few old Polarises that are in stock. It's a type of quad bike. And they want $16,000 and $12,000 for it. They've gone up by 3. They've gone up like 2 to 3 times. They've gone up. And I bought that bike in 2015.
I remember when you pulled on the treadmill at that retreat.
Yeah, we took it to the retreat going back 5 years ago, And
interestingly enough, you're saying that. So I have a client who's a large motorcycle dealer.
Yeah.
And pre-COVID, to be honest with you, they were going okay, but they weren't, kicking every goal out of the park. COVID hit, and business just went nuts. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, but the other reason, there's a couple of economic reasons, is that people are, and I've got a good tip for everyone who gets a rental request reduction. Remind me later.
Okay.
Is that people are at home, they've got not a lot to do, they can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so what happens? Those itches that people want to scratch or never get to scratch.
Yeah.
Suddenly they're all scratching them. People unfortunately were taking a lot of money out of superannuation, and they had $10,000. They were going into my clients and saying, "Hey, I've got $10,000. What do you got to sell?" And they literally started buying bikes from bike sales and reselling it in their stores. Because there was so much demand, and they ran out of stock.
I bought a push bike the other day actually, because I feel like I'm a fat bastard, and I bought a push bike. Yeah, and I bought I don't even know, it was a Gant or Giant or some bike. It was like some really cool bike, and I'd never been to a bike shop before, and I didn't even know how to ride a bike. The guy put the seat up to it, and I was like, "No, put the seat down." He goes, "No, it needs to be higher so you can't stand up." I was like, "Okay, whatever." But he said to me, I said, "Oh, like, can we get a few of the bikes?" I had some mates with me, and he said, "I've only got one bike." And I was like, and I looked at the floor, and he goes, "All these bikes are service bikes." He goes, "I have to fill the floor up with something." He goes, "I can't keep stocking the floor."
Yeah, wow.
We are starting to see a massive boom in all areas.
Yeah.
It's not going to end well, right? If we look at all the money that came from the super, right, everyone sells off their super, and that causes, they say they're selling off $10,000 worth of their super, and all these people taking the money out. That would ultimately fall on there being less revenue in the stock market and whatnot. That would see the prices fall. But instead, we've got an off-balance sheet ledger that's coming in and buying up the assets off the stock market. And this $1 trillion is all that we've seen that's been printed to date, right? What we haven't seen is that the RBA is now doing purchasing of the assets on the stock market. What we haven't seen is that the banks are creating more money at the back end of the bank with relaxing of credit policies. And this is going to cause a massive boom. It will cause a massive bust at some point, but I think the boom that we're about to see and that we are seeing is going to be so amazing. The bust is going to look very gradual for people that are invested at this point, but at the top end there will be a point where it's like, hey, I'm not touching that market, and I'll be very clear about that. But
we're not there yet.
Nowhere near it.
Good.
Nowhere near it. At the early stage of it. It's
Let
like
me know.
we're at the early stage of it, so it's great. So
Yeah. So look, I think economically, it's very disconnected.
Yeah.
Economically, things are really difficult. GDP is going backwards. Debt is increasing. Tax receipts are going down. But there's no bikes in the bike store.
No
right?
bikes, no.
So fun fact. So actually a really good real estate agent who told me this. So he got a number of requests for rental reductions from tenants, right? And they were coming in thick and fast, and so the time delay between going and asking a vendor and then coming back and doing that is just chewing up all his days. So then basically what he said to the tenants was, okay, just tell me what your situation is. He's like, look, I'm working from home, things are tight. I think I've lost a couple of hours here and there. I've lost my overtime was a lot of the information that he was getting. And look, it's really tight, right?
Yeah.
So then he said, okay, no problems. I'm happy to entertain your rental reduction.
Yeah.
And he said, but just answer a few of these questions and I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
So he said, so you're working from home? Yeah. So he goes, oh, you're not paying for travel? He goes, oh, no. He goes, you're not paying for lunches? Oh, no. He goes, and we're in COVID, so you can't go out to dinner, so you're not spending $150 a week at sushi. He goes, you're not watching movies. You're not driving, so you're saving on fuel. So you're probably up about $500 to $600 a week.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why you need a rental reduction? He goes, oh, no, mate, that's fine. I don't need it. Boom, put the phone down, right? So as property owners, as guys within the markets, you got to be switched on, right?
We went a bit more gangster on that. We reminded that everyone that they're contractually obliged to it, and we actually had today, touch wood, we have had 0 rent reductions throughout thousands of properties that we manage at Blink, and we went down the road of advising them of their rights and where they're at. They could take a holiday, but if they were to do that. That they are still liable, and it's a civil action, and we could press on with that. And we're fortunate enough that we've actually got some staff that work inside of Blink that they used to work in debt collection and stuff. Not totally up or anything like that. They're not those type of people, but they work with compliance and understand the law when it comes to debts and whatnot. And we put processes in place, and we haven't had to do any rent reductions, and our delinquencies are up marginally. Like there's always a level of delinquency, small level, but most of the tenants, because we've bought, I guess we may have been a bit shielded from that as well, is that the properties that we buy are at that sort of blue collar area of town.
Yeah, a lot of the rents that you guys have are government funded, right? So which
they're
is
earning more money.
So it's like a government bond.
They're getting a pay rise. Put the rent on.
Right? So, and again, that's why it's good to have discussions with your advisors in terms of property mix, in terms of property type. So a lot of people are very equity strong on properties, and they only want Sydney and only want blue chip suburbs. But in once in a 100-year pandemic, I have properties which are in Sydney, and I got knocked back on rent $150, and I couldn't do anything. Right? Yeah, it was about Asian wasn't very good. And
those
so
ones with farms on them, everybody loves the horses now. Prices are going up.
Yeah.
The ones with the horses, they're all going up.
But a lot of your clients, no rental reductions, or none of your clients rental reductions, right? So
I mean, even the ones with like the acreages, they went up.
Oh, did they?
They love the horses. There's no land for it. They've all chopped them up.
Give me some horses. So look, maybe let's get into it so that we can get everyone into this budget for 2020. So a lot of you guys would have seen, I guess, the information that came out. They have pre-budget media releases to get everyone attuned with what is the information coming out in a budget. I have to say, just as a cap, that there was no big 12 o'clock fireworks in terms of this budget.
No.
Everything they released in the media prior to the budget was really there. They only held back, I think, realistically on some of the business measures. So everyone would have heard that the tax cuts, which were slated for 2021, 2022, 2023, have been brought forward. So stage 3 tax cuts are not in yet, but stage 2 tax cuts have been brought forward. So basically, as an individual, you're looking to get an extra $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
And in terms of if you're a higher income earner, it goes up to $2,600, right?
Okay.
2,565 to be exact. So what they've done is they've sort of compressed what is the tax rates and broadened in terms of how many people fit into those things.
Yep.
And if they were to do the next set of tax cuts, it'd be pretty significant, right? You'd have like a huge amount, I can't remember the percentage, it's like 45% plus people in one tax bracket. So the guy who's paying $38,000, who's earning $38,000 a year, and the guy's $199,000, they're on the same tax bracket.
Yeah, but it'll happen because wages will have to go up so high due to inflation that when the wages go up, that we're going to have to, the 200 grand will just be like 40 grand anyway.
Potentially, right? And so how you view monetary markets and monetary
No
policy.
financial advice, of course.
That's right.
Just for all our friends that like watching us and writing us in letters from government departments. So.
It's one of those things where you are going to see a notable difference in your pay. Now, a lot of people say, well, $2,500, $50 a week, it's not much.
Yeah.
But that's like your rent going up $50 a week, right? You'd be happy with that. You'd be cheering. And if you've got two people in your household, it might go up by, $4,800, $4,900.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where whatever your view may be on how people spend that money or whatever we think people should be doing with that money's going to come to you. You need to do something with it, whether it's invest, whether it's spend. The government would want you to spend.
Get rid of it.
This
and
is a spendathon.
If you look, I've talked about this on a few of the videos recently. Is that if you look at the banks around the world, they're all dropped their rates from like fixed term deposits and all those saving accounts all down to 0.01%, because then it's forcing that liquidity to leave the banks, which is interesting as well. Like, is there stimulus measures that we're not seeing on top of the table, which are being supported via policy changes in the back end of government at the moment that are occurring?
So that everyone saw 2 weeks ago that the responsible lending laws are changing next March.
Yeah.
So that means that the 110,000 boxes you've got to tick to determine whether you can buy a property or not, that's going to get compressed again back down to potentially pre-GFC. There'll still be some measures in place. But that's that.
And there goes the Royal Commission that everyone was worried
exactly
about.
Right.
There goes APRA. See you later. Bye.
So it's one of those things.
Don't let the door hit you on the arse.
It's one of those things where you'll find that the government's obviously taken a view and said, okay, we need to get this economy moving again. Yeah. Housing being an underpinning of the Australian economy, we need to get this going. So they've relaxed that. So there is, I guess, some.
The TV's there, the screen's
still there.
Yeah,
there is some, I guess, reservations that people can have in saying, to use terminology that we can often hear, that the system's sort of rigged, right?
Yeah.
And you can appreciate that. People go, well, in the last 4 years, I've been trying to buy a property desperately, but the lending laws are so difficult. Whether they're good or bad, whether they're appropriate or not, is a different story. But now when it suits them, they change it, right?
All that did was an interest rate rise. We remember very clearly, me, you, and someone else was at a meeting, it was a heated discussion, saying that interest rates would not go down, and said that they would go up, and I said, well, you're wrong. And it was very heated. There was a mediator, and interest rates did go down. And the APRA changes that had come in at the time, even people that we knew were blindsided by the fact that APRA was there to do what an interest rate rise would have normally have done.
Yeah.
They couldn't raise rates because the economy was so broken that we've been living in this illusion. It was so broken that they couldn't do anything about increasing interest rates.
And if you do recall that period, it was a lot of media hype. So if you remember, property prices were going crazy. Yep. People were blaming migrants. They were blaming everyone.
The Liberal and Labor, the negative gearing.
It was everything. They took away travel expenses in 2017 for the properties.
Yeah.
You can no longer claim that. They took away one portion of depreciation.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of, I don't know what you call it, fanfare with regard to property prices.
Yeah.
Now everyone would be dying to have those property prices, busting at the seams again. So they're trying to do everything they can to get it there. Again, right or wrong, we don't know. What the economic impact of that will be. Are people going to take on debt which is problematic for them?
Yeah.
Possibly. They need to obviously caution that. We don't give financial advice. Make sure you get all the checks and balances done when you do go for your loan and lending applications.
This is just a humble accountant here. I'm just some funny guy from out of West Pacific.
So it is one of those things where I personally believe anyway it's going to get a little bit worse and it gets before it gets better.
Yeah.
I think the economy, the things that you see economically in terms of unemployment rates, in terms of debt they're taking on, in terms of everything that you can think that could be negative, they'll show up next year,
Yeah.
right? Because people are living off stimulus, people are living off JobKeeper, businesses sort of going, well, we're okay, so we can push along this bucket. Forward-thinking businesses might be reserving, but now they've implemented a uncapped asset write-off. Businesses go, well, it should be okay.
What does that mean? Like, say, for instance, the business write-off. So
if you did a fit out for $400,000,
yeah,
you write off.
What about if you bought the property for $400,000?
So land is not a depreciating asset, so it's not
the building on top.
So the building on top, depending on how you were to break up or how you were to purchase it.
Yeah.
If you were to buy a block of land and then potentially build on it as a depreciable
What about
item.
if you already had one on there?
No, generally that becomes as a single contract or single issue item, so you wouldn't be able to do it, but you could potentially scrap it and start again.
Yeah.
But I don't think you'd be able to break that up. But there's more to come in terms of that space, because there's going to be a lot of questions like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, those type of things are going to get businesses, all the questions Nathan's asking, going, hey, what about this, what about this, what about that? They're going to explore that. As soon as one hits yes, they go, okay, well, in 10 years' time we'll be okay, so we'll take the plunge now.
Yeah.
So it's important, right? So just a couple of quick figures or key figures that you might want to note is that the unemployment rate for 1920 is pegged at 7%. For 2021, it's going to go up to 7.25%.
But you got the whole of Melbourne sitting in their house. It's rigged. Yeah. It's fraudulent numbers.
If you were to look at engagement in the employment, it'd be higher than that. Yeah. And if you look at people who shouldn't be getting JobKeeper because they're earning like $70 a week, but up until September now, just last month, they were getting $1,500 a fortnight. Yeah. That number would be higher. So there is masking in those numbers. So it probably is a little bit higher. You're right in that regard. Yeah. But in 2021, they're expecting it to come down to 6.5%, which I think is a big drop, right? For not much is going to happen. Debt's going to increase. Essentially, what they're expecting is that coronavirus, the recession element of it, and COVID is going to be eliminated by vaccine. Yeah. Travel is going to resume. Migration is going to resume. Borders are going to open for foreign students, and all that money is going to flow back in. So, if you look at a place like Victoria, it was massively overexposed to education migration, right? Yeah. Where now that's stopped, and everyone's, people generally come into Sydney and they jump over to Melbourne, they jump over to Queensland.
And Sydney's the doormat of the country.
Exactly right. So now Sydney stopped. They're all it's all bottlenecked, right? Yeah. So I think when you see Victoria's figures for the economic parameters, it's going to be a lot worse than this. Yeah. But a key thing that Nathan mentioned in 2021-22, they expect the gross debt as a percentage of GDP to be above 50%, right? So the debt of the country is consuming more than 50% of economic output, right? Which is huge, tremendous for a country like Australia.
It's it's not right.
It's hard to get over. Yeah.
It can't survive. They've got to keep printing.
So yeah, look, potentially they would keep printing, but some of the levers are gone. Like there's not much they can do in terms of interest rates. They could go negative, as you said, but they wouldn't.
I've got a question, right? This is probably the most important question for everyone that's watching. If we've got $1 trillion deficit right now, right? I know everyone's asking, sort of right in all the time, saying who made this money? Who were they borrowing from? That's a very good question. But let's assume we've got $1 trillion worth of debt. If the interest rates went up just to where they were this time last year, just by 1%, bankrupt, right? Yeah. So when you're looking at this data, you can make observations of what can happen. This is what's important for the community, and I get great enjoyment out of being able to awaken people to look at it from different vantage points. Like they can't get out of this; it's trapped. The belly of the beast is trapped. Like they can't move.
Yeah, if tax receipts don't go up, we got a big problem.
They're cutting taxes.
Right. Yeah, which is a problem, right? So there isn't a good answer, and I think potentially that's why you saw, whilst it's the biggest spending budget in history, there wasn't a lot of this is going to get us through. It was more like, okay, and what's next?
It's a fizzer. Now everyone wants that. Okay, you give me 50. When are you going to give me more JobKeeper?
So actually, the funny part is all the economists are saying, and I said it when the budget came out, and I said I think they're keeping their powder dry for next May, right? In the sense that that's typically when the budget comes out. You might see something gigantic then, and then that's when Nathan could be right when instead of being at $703 billion in terms of debt, we might jump to $1 trillion, right? Because they have to get us out of this. But we don't know, right? There's a lot of smart people in Treasury. There's a lot of people who are doing really good things. But could they have been a little bit more forward planning with this? I reckon they could have, to be honest with you. There's no big, gigantic infrastructure projects which they sort of rolled out and said, we're going to build a highway straight through the middle of North West all the way to Northern Territory.
Yeah.
They could have, but they didn't, right?
You're going to have to one day.
You've got to build something,
It's they've had 2 years to think about this since October 2018 when the GFD really struck. We saw the yields go negative, we saw the bond yields implode, and it's cool.
Yeah, look, I don't know if I'd categorise it cool, because there's people who get affected, but
Oh,
I know
true,
what you
true.
mean. I know
Like,
what you mean. I do know what you
true,
mean. Right?
true.
So just a quick little recap. So the low and middle income tax offset is going to be retained until June 2021. They're going to then have another offset come in, which is going to be a single offset, which is going to be called LMITO, which is going to be reduced, and it's going to be a single offset of $700. They do at the moment have non-resident tax rates. So if you're a foreigner, or a lot of the clients Nathan has, for example, live in Southeast Asia and whatnot, those rates haven't changed, unfortunately. There is something that's going to be called, which was didn't go under the radar, but it wasn't really massively advertised, and it was one of the budget announcements on the night, was the Your Super. Did you hear about that?
What about my super? No, what's Your Super? Tell us.
So Your Super is basically like another MyGov, right? So MyGov basically tracks your RMS, your ATO, your Medicare, everything that has to do with you and the government, your family tax benefit, all those type of things. They're going to introduce a Your Super. So basically what they're going to say is they're going to get rid of super funds who are non-performing, so not self-managed, but retail funds. So what this is, I think, is a consolidation of the super pool of money to be able to have...
Make a bigger Ponzi scheme out
it's
of control,
more
state-owned.
focused, yeah.
State-owned.
I wouldn't call it a Ponzi scheme, but yeah, just quietly.
Oh, okay, I'll take that back for all the people that like to write letters in from the government.
So it's one of those things where Your Super portal will essentially make your management of your super, not to use your too many times in a sentence, a lot easier. So you move from one employee to another, and you get to dictate from your end how that super comes to you.
But I look at this.
I actually
right?
like this thing, to be honest.
If you had a free market though, Red, if you had a free market, right, there's 10 market stores on the corner and you can go to choose whichever one you want. That's a free market, right? Communist, right, means that you got one which is state owned, right? If everything's going state owned,
it's not state owned, but they're going to nominate who is eligible. So it's look, whether or not it's a good thing in terms of competition, there's definitely an argument to be had there, right? Where the government can come in and they can say non-performing funds, you're out of there. But there are a lot of non-performing funds, neo funds, new ones, for example, who are trying to break away from the big model where they own buildings in the city and whatnot, right?
Well, it's like half the banks around the business park here, they're all closed.
Yeah, they are. And look,
we'll be back. We're temporarily closed. They're never coming back. I still remember the St George Bank here. That had we're just temporary renovating. The place closed down forever.
Well, actually, you bring up a good point in the sense that if you look at a lot of the lexicon and languages coming out of the government now, it is a return to work, it is to go back to work, it is to get in the office, so that flexible working arrangement during COVID is now being not pulled back, but I think being tempered, because a lot of the big super funds, a lot of the building owners in the city which have a lot of pull, they're understandably bleeding quite a lot. So they're going to use government workers to be able to start that, proceed back, and then private will follow, right? So it is important to understand, I guess, how all those bits and pieces intertwine. Super funds are very powerful organisations. They own a lot of assets. They own a lot of city assets. So they'll all be pushing to make sure that, again, the economy starts working for everyone, which is good. And there's a lot of, obviously, retirees who need to have their super paid. So, we hope that everything goes well.
That's the tough part, right? Like, there's a lot of people that have been reaching out, maybe not as much as our investors and our clients that we deal with, but their parents, more elderly, and they are relying on their super. There's no time to recover from that, and obviously the first thing is that they're just buying up the assets and pushing them up artificially, but that's not a sustainable model to continuously do that. How many funds are paying out returns at the moment? How many?
Yeah, it's all dropped off, and
it's all
dividends are all ceased, or they might start soon, especially from the banks where a lot of pensioners and retirees have their
Yeah.
money invested in terms of blue chip.
Yeah.
So one other thing for property investors that came out, did you see the granny flat exemption?
I heard something about
Yeah,
that.
so if you have your own home and you've got a granny flat at the back, there's discussion that they're going to pass a granny flat capital gains exemption. So if you've got elderly Australians, people with disabilities, special needs, anything like that in those granny flats, and I think ultimately it will extend to anyone with a granny flat because it's hard to police that, you won't have to pay capital gains tax on your own home, which is very different to what it was previously.
Okay.
So if you have your business or you have a business in the event of running a property out the back in your backyard, then you need to apportion that for capital gains tax purposes, so you lose your exemption. So here the thing, you're bringing that in, and I think that's a density problem that they've got.
Yeah.
As apartment blocks and everything stop getting constructed because there's no migration, there's not as many people coming into the country, taking up of those stocks will mean that there's probably a shortfall. I think, I can't remember when it was. It was one of our B.Invested programs at the Hills Lodge.
Yeah.
And you predicted migration to be, you predicted a shortfall in housing despite migration.
Yeah.
And at the time I said, no, that can't be right.
You were up to 330,000 properties, dwellings short currently at the moment. That was maybe 12 months ago that I looked at last. I remember when I first saw that data, and it was back in about 2009 or 2011. I think it's about 2009 actually. We were short as a nation about 160,000 dwellings, and 160,000 dwellings is pretty. You got to make 160,000 dwellings, and the chart was going up in an upwards trajectory. We're now, last time I looked at 330,000 in the red. I keep having pop-ups that pop up on this screen, guys. So we're just trying to keep it going. Like we've got states like, say, Brisbane. There's articles that I've referred to recently which say that they want to have 4 million population in Brisbane by 2035 or 20.
What's the population now?
Oh, a lot less than that. I don't know, maybe like 1.5 to 2 million.
New South Wales like 5, isn't it?
Now Sydney is 4 million people in Sydney.
Sorry,
so
Sydney.
Brisbane will be the size. Brisbane CBD will be the size of Sydney population in the next 15-20 years.
Which is
That's
amazing.
the dwellings that need to happen.
Well, imagine all the dwellings that clients have purchased, which are 15-20 minutes out from Brisbane CBD, Gold Coast CBD.
Yeah.
They're pretty useful.
My mum, I still remember this very clearly. My mum, fellows that have met my mum, she's very vocal and she's like, "Oh, fucking Nathan!" she's like 80 almost, and she grew up in Lane Cove as a child.
I went to school there.
Sorry?
I went to school there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
It's she grew up in Lane Cove, and my brother was living in Balmain at the time, and she goes, "Balmain," and I know that you've got an office in Balmain. She goes, that fucking rat-infested housing commission area, and her mindset of Balmain, for those of you that don't know Balmain, it's a very exclusive sort of area. What would the property price be there for a little unit or something?
Average would be at least 1 point something, 1.2,
1.2.
1.3. House would be closer to 2 and a bit.
2.5 mil. And my mum remembered that as being this workers area that was very rough and all that sort of stuff from like 50, 60 years ago. And we look at these areas that are so close to Sydney. Recently they did an infrastructure project where I think they've made it up to about 40-storey buildings for Mount Druitt, and it's like, because it's a rougher blue-collar area, not that densely populated, it's easier to buy the stuff, nuke it, it's got the infrastructure, rail, roads, all that sort of stuff, and you can improve upon it. So a lot of the sort of locations I've looked at, for ourselves and our investors over the last few years have been in those areas that would be regenerification sort of areas.
And again, that's testament to why, if you look at a property just now or in the next 2 or 3 years, it's very difficult to say, is it a winner or is it a loser, right? So when we do our reviews with clients, we always go over and rehash how the cash flow and the tax implications are.
Yeah.
But you need to have that forward view to understand what it's doing. We've had a lot of clients probably in the last 2 years who have said, "I'm so glad I didn't sell."
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 years ago when they purchased, they were itching to sell.
Yeah.
Right? They were literally itching to sell. So it's important.
I think one of the other things as well, like this is just in business and what a lot of your clients would be seeing, like business clients and whatnot as well, is I think as an investor, as a business owner, I always say treat property investing as a business. I've said it since day one of investing, that you need to be like fluid with markets. You need to be adaptable to change. You need to be, if things change, it's like, okay, things change, right? How can we take it, take the upper hand on that? How can we capitalise on that? And as an investor, you need to be looking at the opportunities that sit out there in this period of time, and not the negative. You can sit there and
absolutely,
look
without a
apart.
doubt, right?
Yeah.
So, just to keep recapping, so the Homemaker, I think it's called, where they gave you an incentive to actually go out and build a residence under 750, 25 grand, that one.
Yeah.
That's not being extended. That's actually finishing off in the end of December. That's actually has proven to be quite lucrative for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have taken it up, especially from the package home builders, the Stocklands and those type of guys of the world, where they've gone out and run out and sold these to a lot of people. And so they're sort of running short on stock. I think the big consensus was they wanted that to be extended.
Yeah.
But what they've done in lieu is that they've extended the first homeowners super savers type thing. So basically where you can purchase off 5%.
Yeah.
And you can purchase. They've opened up another 10,000 spot. But I think CBA came out today and said that they're already full.
They're literally giving you the deposit.
Yeah,
to
right,
buy
so
property.
5%, 5% is a pretty ridiculous amount to be able to pay for a property, and they've increased the rate, so it's more reflective of Sydney prices. So now it's up to $950. So you can put a 5% deposit down and go off and buy a property. I think in Melbourne it's $850, in Brizzy it's $650, right? So they're trying to push people to spend, whether it's on property, whether it's on retail, whether it's on any form of economic activity.
Planned equipment.
Yeah, so the instant asset write-off, which I have to say I was wrong about. I said that it will never get extended beyond June. It got extended to December, and now it's extended to 2022.
I think that we're only at the start of this too.
Yeah.
I think we're only at the start of this. Like, I think we're at a new phase. If they take, there's a thing that I in my modelling and forecasting for the future, one of the thoughts that I had was that we would see very quick and severe sort of recession. So like in a 10-year period, we could see a recession every year occur, depending on which way they steer things. The only way to stop that is just to paper over it, but it'll, cause a bigger issue.
Yeah.
And they're going to be trapped to these things. I think we're going to continue to succeed.
Potentially, yeah. I don't think it's going to be as odd to see this type of thing continue. I honestly thought that December would be it, and they would kill it off. So essentially, what the instant asset write-off is, for those who own businesses, sole traders, trusts, companies, any type of business, depending on the level of your business. But for most of us, this would be a qualificatory thing. You're turning over less than 500 million or 50 million, depending on the type of business. You can basically write off any asset. So whether you purchase a car, whether you purchase a screen, a laptop, a wall, a door, anything, they've just said it's unlimited, right?
So if someone was to go and buy a car, right, I've just got my random questions here because I'm assuming that I'm thinking the same thing as a lot of people will be thinking. If I wanted to go buy a new car, and I was thinking of setting up a business as well, and I set up the business, and then I decided to buy the car under the business, would that mean that I could claim the whole car as a tax deduction?
Yeah, so long as that car is commercial in nature,
Okay.
so if it's a ute or some sort of commercial vehicle, then you don't, up until December, you have a limit of 150.
Okay.
If it's a passenger vehicle and you're using it for work,
Yeah.
Obviously depending on the percentage you use for work, but let's say average would be say 70, 60, 50%,
Yeah.
then that entire amount, call it 50 grand, would be a deduction for you. So then you'd have a $50,000 loss, so your first 50 grand of income would be tax free.
What about if you had a Lamborghini?
Yeah, it's only 57,000 with passenger
Okay.
vehicles.
Okay.
The other part you can't get away with.
Oh, okay. And then what about if someone needed a new Mac? I went to buy a new MacBook a while back, and they were like $5-6 grand. Like if you bought that in a business, you can claim it straight away.
Claim it straight away. So it's unlimited, uncapped items, and for businesses our size, it would be also second-hand items, right?
Okay.
For some businesses, only new items.
So our size business second-hand, like
Second-hand,
a
so
second-hand
new
dwelling.
and second-hand, yeah.
Second-hand dwelling. Now, what about that poses an interesting thing. I'm just thinking, like, I was on the phone to someone literally when we came live, I was hanging out from one of our investors, and I said, like, whenever I hop on live, is what comes to mind, and it's all fresh and authentic. So I'm just thinking, like, would this be a time where a lot of people do you think, would go into business and set up a business because there's incentives around setting up business?
So, I mean, that's one of the underlying unspoken elements of creating these type of business measures, is that as unemployment increases, people then turn to their own talents, their own devices to say what I can do. So I've got a lot of industrious clients. Actually, one of our clients is really good. She has been stood down, and so she's gone off and set up her own little business. And so she hasn't basically rested on her laurels. She's gone off and set up a business, and she's doing extremely well. So that might mean that she doesn't return to the typical workforce. But that's also okay, because work, its nature, how work is actually conducted is changing quite significantly, right? So 4 years ago, we had the whole AI scare, that everyone's jobs is going away. That sort of disappeared because it was making people freak out. But those type of things, those redundancies are still going to be in place, right? So the more, the more unemployment there is, then there's probably a more push towards creating, and I think Australia has, some insane number of small businesses, like 2.5 million. That's why a lot of these measures are in place, so that people go, okay, well, I have a client actually who's doing roof painting, right? And in this, midst of this COVID pandemic, he's had the busiest months and weeks he's ever had. It's booked out till December, right? So if you can, or you do need to have any chats in terms of setting up a business, what it would look like, obviously we can assist, or your accountant can assist. But then in terms of what you can actually write off, in terms of what you can write off, in terms of what you're entitled to, what structures, those type of things, it's always good to make sure that you fall within the parameters of the budget, and so that way you can, again, capitalise on what would be a really good measure. I had a client actually who's set up a business, picking up a car tomorrow, and we were pushing him to get that car before December. And I was like, look, it's all good now. You don't have to necessarily get it before December. You can go till 2022. So all those things are really important. As individual taxpayers, it might not feel as important for you, but what you got to remember is that as more businesses increase, then things become more competitive. As things become more competitive, then people start to spend more, and that's the flow-on effect that they want. They want the market to become fully at full capacity or fully occupied, right? Until then, they'll keep spending to take up that slack. So they say to Nathan, go cut down trees for 400 grand a year. You probably go do a little bit of it, right?
I plough over with cars. I run trees down.
So that's what modern monetary theory suggests, which is why they're okay to print, because they think they can spend their way out of the slack in the economy, and they can pick it up. So just to continue on, the job maker, as I mentioned to a lot of people here might be recipients of job seeker, job keeper. And one thing that I have as an accountant is that there is no shame in being employed, whichever way it is. So if you're employed, you're on job keeper, job seeker, whatever it might be, you look to all these measures and say, that's the reason I've been paying tax all these years, right? So I have a lot of all across the spectrum clients on job keeper and job seeker. And a lot of clients are like, oh, should I get on it? I feel a bit weird. I go, well, you paid tax for the last 20 years. This is what it's there for. So the job maker hiring credit, they don't want to call it a wage subsidy, but it is a wage subsidy. They will pay people who are in businesses $100 to $200 a week, depending on the nature of the person whom they're hiring, to employ them essentially, right? And so that person has to be on some sort of benefit, either job seeker or some other paid parental leave, for example. And the business will get that. So if you're at the moment looking for a job, now might be a perfect time to get out and start hunting for a job, because it incentivizes employers to go off and do that. If you're in a skill or you're going back to retrain, the government's put a lot of money behind, I think it's in the order of 680 million or 860 million, I can't remember, into retraining, reskilling, hiring apprentices as well, and in businesses as well. If you're on a business that's in construction, you'll get some more benefits for hiring those skills and apprentices.
I'm actually thinking about it more and more, and I said this at the start of all this back in March, and I said it in the mentoring program before a few years ago, that this is a time, if you leave this era, like this next month, week, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, without improving your position, you're stupid. People aren't upskilling themselves and trying to build a side hustle. I think having this situation that we're seeing at the moment, seeing ourselves in a recession / depression, that doesn't give that much confidence to people. People should be questioning their job security and asking themselves, what can I be doing to improve my position so I could never be stuck in a bad position? Could I be setting up a side business that brings an income, even if it's a minimal amount of income? There could be a tax benefit from that if you're getting instant asset write-off and all that sort of stuff, to have a side gig that you can sort of build a secondary stream. So if you lose your job, well, then you've also got your business that you can work on and still get income, and there's all the incentives and benefits to be able to do that. So I think businesses are big winners out of this too. And I think people should.
Yeah, I think it is a business budget, to be honest with you, more so than a personal budget. The tax cuts are great, but how much or how many people are going to go out and buy, another pair of shirts on Afterpay or whatever it might be, is yet to be seen. It is one of those things where I think the economy has too many loose ends. That you've got like a big, a buy now, pay later problem that we have, right? And if everyone comes off the boil, then what happens there to retail's, it's a big thing. And again, it's a little bit hard to compute how the stock market is at all-time highs, but we're spending the most amount of money. So just to give you a couple of stats, this year alone, we're spending, the budget is looking at a $213 billion loss or deficit, which is 11%. And in 2018, 2019, we were meant to be almost heading back into the black, right? We're at 0.05. So it's a pretty staggering number, and that's going to improve over the years. But how fast it improves, I don't know. So again, the more, I think one of the things the more assets you control, gives you the more opportunity when things go well.
Go bad. So good or bad.
Good or bad, exactly right. So it is one of those things. For those of you who have aged parents or senior citizens within your family household or your network, you're going to get another $250 in November and a further $250 early next year for them. So there is a lot of, I guess, free money being thrown around in a bids to actually get that movement and that spending going. Again, not a lot of people will have businesses to be able to claim this, but R&D expenditure is going to be encouraged by the government as well. They're going to continue to expand small business exemptions to be able to get things moving again. For property investors specifically, there's not much that's happened other than looking at what you had existing pre-budget. I think what you'll find is that come May, when they realise that not a lot of this is moving. So if you look at last year's stats, the $1,080 they gave everyone actually wasn't spent. It was more saved than spent. And all the savings that are happening during COVID, which is no food, no entertainment, no lunches, no travel, no holidays, no interstate holidays, that's all being saved. So disposable income is actually going up. People are paying off their debt, which is why they're a little bit more happy to spend that money.
And investing too.
And investing, absolutely. I think you said, was it you? Yeah, you said to me before that there's no stock,
There's no stock in property.
Yeah.
I see on Facebook all the time and Instagram people showing off and going, oh, look at me, I've just made money in shares.
Yeah.
Everybody's investing their money in these things. And it's
so shares, for those of you who
I'm not that I'm a fan of that.
If you were listening, I bought shares, for example, when it dropped, right? But it doesn't mean I'm smart. It just means that I knew there was a drop and I know there's going to be a rebound at some point. So even ASIC, APRA, they're all really worried about what they call is the part-time investors, mum and dad investors, who are all piled in. And what happens? They all pile out, right? So it is one of those things that you should get financial advice or understanding of how shares operate. Why you're investing in shares? Are they small caps? Are they larger type shares? It is important because you can lose money easily. I had a lot of friends who are invested in shares, and a week and a half ago they're a lot richer than they are today, unfortunately. But it will probably bounce back. We don't know, but it's hard to say. So investing in the right asset is integral, but the time period in which you invest for is, in my opinion, so much of the importance part of it, how they come off, right? Because if you're investing for tomorrow, it's good, but if you're investing for literally tomorrow, it's a problem, right? And you've never been a big believer of that, right? So I can't remember the last time you actually said someone to sell.
It would have been many years ago.
So that's the sort of budget in a small, capping off for you. Again, there wasn't a huge amount to report. There wasn't any changes to property laws. There weren't any changes to deduction laws. In fact, it's the reverse. They're sort of loosening it. So generally, when we do budget updates, it's this has changed, that's changed, this has changed. But here it's just like, here's the money for the businesses, and they needed to do that because obviously the coronavirus and the COVID recession that's occurred has been massive, and really, really thankful in Australia that it's under control. We haven't had that many deaths. It's obviously very, very tragic overseas, despite your view on it.
I'm just being quiet here. I'm being quiet.
So look, from a personal point of view, my heart goes out to all the families who have struggled with that and lost people.
You're a gentleman, Ridhwan. This guy here is one of the biggest gentlemen that you ever come across in life. So,
it's a tough world at the moment. So it is one of those things they had to spend, and as you said earlier on, expect it to continue. And it'd be a good timestamp to see whether Nathan's right.
I think the party's just getting started.
If they actually reach $1 trillion before 2023, it'd be interesting to start.
I reckon we could be at 3 trillion by 2023.
Well, that's
it's a big call. It's a big call. It's a big call. Yeah.
So if those tax cuts get brought forward, which is stage 3, which is slated for 2024, and they get brought forward, then you might be right, because that's a big hit as well. But at this stage, that is the budget update for this year, which affects majority of our clients. There are a lot of in-depth little bits and nooks and crannies that we've sent out an email today. I think some of your staff got it as well. If you need anything, just email Nathan or email myself, and we can get you in touch with some paperwork and some numbers which suit.
Just give us a buzz, 1300 367 925. Send us an email at admin@binvested.com.au, and my team will hook you up with Ridhwan and put it in safe hands so Ridhwan can shepherd you through this time and
happy to
make
help.
sure you get there safely.
I've seen the live stream is blurry.
Yeah, that was a little while ago. I don't know. Yeah, it's maybe it's the lighting in here. I don't know. So. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in. Going to cut it there in an hour and keep being awesome and taking advantage of the opportunities that are out there in 2020.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for coming in, Red.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.